Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that is very close to my heart whenever I'm developing such applications, okay? This is somebody that has come to our channel and said that, they want to do some role-based access control using roles, authentication, users, permissions, all of that stuff. And I am going to go and take a deep dive into how you can definitely do this inside your application without actually going through a whole tutorial process. I'm just going to walk you through the steps. We have this application over here. We have access, all right, as a particular administrator. But now if I decided that there was going to be a user and they're not an administrator, they're not going to be able to access this application. So how this goes about, if I'm going to open my project right here, this is what happens. In my database, I have my roles table as the first table before my users. And the reason why I have that is because inside the users table, I have this role ID over here. And I said constraint and default being number 3. And then whenever I am creating these roles, I have these roles already created. So I cannot delete these roles from the system. I've not enabled it to be like that. I've not enabled these roles to be deleted from the system. So now what I can do is I can enable such a manner of like, okay, let's say this is a super administrator, then an administrator, a normal user, and the security. Okay. If this is the situation, then I can already come in here and just decide, all right, I'm going to attach a role ID to the particular user that I'm going to be creating. And that's how the system goes on. I'm also going to enable this system not to be able to delete this particular user that has been created from the very beginning of the system. Now, it sounds a bit tedious, it sounds a bit childish in terms of, okay, this is like entry-level coding, okay? So, how do you go on and try as much as you can to, create the roles and attach it to the users without having to create the roles and rename it over here so that it comes before the users? Well, we're going to actually go ahead and create two tables. There's the roles table and there's something that is used to update the users table, which would be called a constraints table. Okay, I would call it a constraints table. I don't know the actual term for it. So I would come in here and do PHP artisan migrate or PHP artisan make model or make migration. All right, I'll come in here and create the make migration, and then I'll come in here and say add constraints to users table. All right, so this is how I would call it, like this. I will write it down like this, word for word. Okay, and then I come into the users that area and actually start doing some edits. So this is an example of a constraints table that I have. And instead of having schema create like this one over here, instead it has a schema table, and then it adds other items into the table that has already been created. So over here, I would actually put in users, and then over on this side, I would actually put, like, let's say, foreign ID, role ID, constrainted, and, attach it to the roles table. So that's how I would go about that. Then from that point onwards, that's when now we can start playing the game that we have already played. But that's not how I want to go ahead and introduce this. The way I want to introduce this is a new fresh application that I've just installed, Breeze. And what I have done with this application is I have enabled it to have this. Let's actually go in and check it out. So we can go to our dashboard and we have our products page, okay? And inside this products page, we have access to this table. Of course, I don't know how to properly style with Tailwind CSS, so I've not gone ahead and styled this with Tailwind CSS, but regardless of the situation, we can move. We can go ahead and actually start debating on what migrations we're going to be creating. And what I've done here is, because I want this user to have multiple roles in the system, this is what I've done. I've created the roles table over here. I've put the name and I've put the permissions, okay? And this permissions is a JSON format table, a JSON format column. And then over here on the role user migration that I created externally, I've done this. I've put the user ID, like so, and then I've also done the foreign ID as the role ID, and then I've made those two columns the primary key as a composite primary key. And then we have the products table. Of course, now the products table is attached to like that products list that is going to be there, and that's how we operate. So what are we going to be doing next? We are supposed to create a few things. One is at this end over here of the role users table, we should be creating some, some roles. Okay, we should also be creating some permissions. Let's say, for example, we have inside our config, we have our permissions, and then we have our permissions over here where we have the manage products, manage users, and all that stuff, right? If we go ahead and come in here, create something else, like let's say, access dashboard. Okay? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to create two middleware, okay? One that checks the roles of this particular user and one that checks the permissions of this particular user, all right? We could actually just create one in the sense of, let's actually take into account the fact that any user who would be able to get into this system will have roles, and once they have roles, they will have to have permissions. So this is how we go about this. We'll come in here and do PHP artisan make middleware, and then we'll come in here and say check permission. Then when we go to check permission, we'll go ahead and create our middleware from this point over here. What we want to check is if the authenticated user has permission. And now the permission that will be passed in here will be probably now a permission that is like inside the config. So what we'll come in here and do, we'll just put this permission variable over here, and we'll pass it in through this function as a parameter. So I'll come in here and say permission. And now once we do that, we come in here and say, if this user has permission, then return the next request. Otherwise, abort. And say it's an abortion with a 403 code. Okay, so that's usually the forbidden. And when we abort, we come in here and say that, again, you are not allowed to access, or you're not permitted. All right. So now in such a situation, we create a middleware like this. We go ahead into our Bootstrap app and actually register it over here. We'll come in here and say middleware alias. And then we'll come in here and call the alias, all right? We'll come in here and call the aliases. And these aliases are usually in the format of an array. This array will come in here, we'll take the alias. The alias in this situation will be has permission, or we'll just do permission. Okay, we'll do permission, and then we'll come in here and call the permission class. So the check permission class, like so. So once we have that, we have some few functions that we also need to get into the system. So for example, we have this has permission function over here, which is supposed to go inside the user's model. And we come in here and say, first of all, this user has many roles. So we'll come in here and do public function, and we'll say roles. And then we'll come in and say return this belongs to many, and we'll come in and say role class, and it will use all the conventions. So we don't even need to define the pivot table at this point, because the pivot table at this point will be role user, like that. But we can just leave it like this and it will be fine. And we inside the roles, we also have the same situation, okay? We'll come in here and go into the roles table, and then we'll have the roles like this. So this belongs to many user class, and then we'll go to the table role user, and that's how that works. So once we have those roles inside the users table, then we can check through the roles if this permission is actually there. So we're going to come into this function. We're going to create a public function. And we're going to call this has permission, and it takes in a permission. And inside here, we're going to come in here and do a for each loop, okay? And when we do a for each loop, for each this roles, and we'll leave it like this without having to call the function as a function, and then we'll come in here and say as role. And then we'll come in here and do in array, So we'll say return in array. All right, not even return in array. We'll just say if in array, and I'll put this inside brackets. If in array, and the array that we're looking at, we're taking the needle. The needle is the permission itself. And the haystack we're talking about is the permissions inside the role. Okay, so we'll come in here and say role permissions. Okay, and here, given that it's stored in JSON, we need to come in here and say JSON decode. And now that that is done, if in array, then we'll come in here and say return true. And outside the for each loop, if all this is run and the return true has not come through yet, then we'll return false. And now once that is done, we can now go into our routes. This is the key place where we're going to put in our middleware such that it will work with the routes that we're dealing with. For example, if we come in here and now start saying that we want to put a middleware over here in the routes of the products, we'll come in here and actually put middleware, and then we'll come and say has permission, or we'll say permission. All right, and then we'll do a colon and then put in the parameter that we need. And this parameter will be the permission. So we'll come and say manage products. Okay, and just like that, we have our section where we cannot access the products. So you can see 403, you are not permitted. But if we go back to the dashboard and refresh this, you can see we definitely have our access to the dashboard. Products, we cannot access. Let's go back to dashboard, we can access, which is good, okay? So the permissions are working, and now in order to access this point where we can be able to enable the rules to actually work, what we're going to do here is we're going to come in here and take in our roles and everything. So we're going to create a user, okay? So we'll come in here and just do DB, we'll just do DB, table, and then we'll take the table of the users, okay, and then we'll come and say insert, and inserting, what we're inserting is the name, the email, and the password, okay. So we'll come in and do the name, the email, and the password. And we have our different levels, okay? So we have my name over here, Steve Nyanumba. We have our email. The email will be my email, my personal email, which is stevennb9 @gmail.com. And then we'll also have our password. Our password now, maybe we'll come in here and just do a hash. All right, so we have to store this as a hashed value. All right, so we'll do hash make, and then we'll come in, I'll put my password, which is 12345678990, and just like that, I'm just going to put commas here because they need commas, and just like that, we are good to go with the users table. Now, when we go to the roles, we'll just come in here and do DB, and then we'll come in here and say roles, okay, DB table, sorry, and then we'll come in here and say roles. And then inside the roles, we're inserting the following. We'll come in here and open it up, and then we'll come in here and say name, and the name now this time will be super administrator. All right, we'll have the super administrator. We have our email being, not email, but permissions will be a JSON encode. All right, so JSON encode. And then what we're encoding is what we'll get from the config. And we'll come in here and say features. And now just like that, we have our features set up for our super administrator with all the features that are listed down inside our config features. So now once that is set and done, we can now move on forward to seeing what else we can do. And I don't know why that light has just gone off. So now the next thing that we move on forward to do is Once we've created that, we have to also now include this inside our role user table. So I'm just going to come in here, copy this, change this to role user. And let me get rid of this. And then inside here, we have the user ID, and then we have the role ID. And now because this one, we've not even set the ID, we can come in here and set the ID to being ID, and then we'll say 1, since it's an integer. And then we'll do user ID and role ID, and we'll set them up. So we have user ID being 1 here. We have role ID being 1 here. And now, because that has been set up, okay, we'll be able to migrate everything again. So we'll just do a PA rollback. We'll just do migrate fresh, right? I think this will just work perfectly, just like that. So once we've done all this, we'll be able to come in here, refresh this. We'll have to log in again. And when we're logging in, we'll come in here. I'll put this password here. And the password, the email and the password, 12345678890, and we're saving it in. Now we have this, and now we also have the access to the product area. So now you can see over here in array, haystack must be of a type array, null given. So what I'm going to do here, because we've gotten this part over here wrong. This part over here, where is it? The users table. And there is in array, and then argument, the haystack must be of a type array, right? So, oh, not features, it's permissions. What am I saying? It's permissions. The file is called permissions. The file is called permissions. So I need to enable it like this, and then I do the migrate fresh again, and we have a problem. So array to string conversion. So what we need to do again is we do a JSON encode, and this JSON encode, and boom. Okay, so now once we've done that, we can now migrate fresh again, and now everything is done. We refresh this, or you see JSON decode or pass in an empty array. If it's if it's null, then it's going to return null. So we need to pass in an empty array, and that's how we go about it. So this one is working because now we already have this person logged in. So now if we log out and we go to the register page and register somebody fresh, like this one, register maybe this one with a different email and a different password. All right, that is fine. So now when this person is in, and we'll save this, if I go to products, it's forbidden. So if I come back to the dashboard, I'm logged in. So forbidden for this one. But if I come in here, log out, and then log in as the other user, which is this one, then you can see I'm logged in and I can go to the products. And that's how that works. So now in Livewire, how do we implement this part over here for this middleware? Initially, most of the time would be a whole essence of okay, the dashboard can only be accessed by somebody who's logged in as, you know, the person who has the permissions. So let's actually log in as this person, okay? Then we go to the dashboard. And now, because we have the dashboard inside our Livewire, or actually even I think it's inside our views. It's just inside our views. So because we have our dashboard inside our resources views here, okay? We have this. What we could do, because we have this dashboard of blade.php, or it's just a normal page. Okay, so given that it's a normal page, what we can do here, I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to do what? I'm going to come in here, do PHP artisan make Livewire, and then I'm going to say dashboard. And now once we make the dashboard, we'll go ahead inside this dashboard area over here, and then we'll come in here and say use check permission. All right. And once we set that up, we'll come in here and say use, well, let's say we have a construct function, right? So I'm going to come in here and do a public function construct dash construct, and like this, we're going to come and say this middleware, the controllers. I've forgotten what controllers are. I keep on forgetting what controllers are, because once you get into middleware, you're not going to use controllers anymore. You'll use your UI as your controller as well. And that's what generally happens. And I don't know if I should do this here. I might not do this here. I might actually decide to do this like this. Yeah, I could actually put a middleware in Livewire like this. I've cancelled out all this, and then I'll say auth user. So I'll come and call auth from facades, and then I'll come and say user, and then I'll say has permission, and the permission I'm checking for is manage access dashboard. Okay, so I have the access dashboard permission over here. Okay, and now because I have the access dashboard permission over here, I'll come in here and say that we'll do view dashboard or abort for 3 and put in a message not permitted to, and then I'll come in here and concatenate it with the permission itself, access dashboard. So I'll come in here and say access dashboard, because I've not passed in the permission dynamically. And then now at this point, what I'm just going to do here is return. So that is how we go about that. And this one should just be one single question mark anyway. So that's how that works. And if I come in here and refresh this now, I can access dashboard over here. But now, because I've created this new dashboard area, I've not set it inside the routes. So inside the routes, we have this part for the dashboard over here, okay, where we have the middleware auth verified, and then the name is dashboard. So the view that has been set over here is the dashboard. What I'm going to do here is, instead of doing this like that, I am going to first of all make this a route group. Okay, I'm going to make a route group, another route group, and now inside this route group, I'll come inside the route group and pass in a function. All right. And then this route group is the first one that is going to be inside here. And then this route are also going to be inside here. So I'm just going to come in here and drag this to the bottom. But now instead of passing in route view, I'm just going to pass in route get. And then I'm going to pass inside here the dashboard, and then the view will be, I'll pass in the dashboard, and it's coming in from Livewire, so dashboard class, like that. And then we have the middleware. So this middleware is what we're going to be attaching at the very top over here. So I'm just going to come in here and attach it. I'm actually going to cancel this and put it inside like this, and remove the arrow, of course, and that's how that is done. And then we have the name dashboard attached to it. So now we're going to be accessing the dashboard class. If I come in here and refresh this, you can definitely see that we have a few different things. Unexpected end of file, I don't understand why, but I think it should be like this. Okay, so you can see we're not permitted to access the dashboard. So now if I go back to the login, I can't go back to the login, because if I go to the login, it's trying to redirect us to the dashboard. So what I'm supposed to do here is I'm supposed to be able to log out from a particular point, okay? Now, given that I've put in a middleware inside the UI itself, okay, I can't access the page. The page is not going to show up. So, because it's already aborted. So let me just reverse all this and we're good to go. So now once we refresh this, we go back to dashboard, refresh the dashboard, we're good to go. If we go to the dashboard itself, this is where we're supposed to paste the UI. So I'm just going to come in here and paste the UI over here, and boom, and we're good to go. So we have a dashboard over here, we have a products page over here, which is not accessible. But now if we log out and then log in as the super administrator, which is this guy with this email, then we're able to go in, right? And then we go to products, we can go to products. If we want to go to products create, we can go to products create. If we were logged in as the other user, we wouldn't be able to log in as the user. So what have I said? We'll go first of all, and this is not the beginner-friendly version. We're going to do the beginner-friendly version in Laravel version 12. In this version, what I have done is I've created a users and roles tables, and I've created the pivot table, which is the role user table. I've defined them as follows, okay? The roles table is going to take in a JSON column, okay, which has permissions, and then the name of the role itself. We have the role user area where we have declared the user ID, the role ID, and then we've declared the user and the role ID. Then we've created the values, okay? We've created a user, we've created a role, and attached permissions into them. The permissions are always going to be these over here. And the reason why I've set up the permissions to be these over here is because if we hard code them like this, they're all codependent on the permission, on the features that are actually inside the system. I'm not going to have a table in my database for permissions because I am not going to allow for dynamic permissions, okay? Dynamic permissions only are going to be enabled if, let's say, for example, we had this file for features, and then we have different kinds of permissions set up in such a manner that you can pick out each and every single feature that is enabled within our features column over here, or features config, and then we start attaching them to the permissions the way we've attached these permissions into the roles. And then from there, now you can start attaching the permissions to the roles and then attach the roles to the users. So essentially, I've just stopped one step and said the features and the permissions are one and the same thing. And then for what I have enabled inside this application here is I've created middleware and started using them inside the routes. If I don't use them inside the routes, then where am I going to use them? Maybe inside the controllers if you're not using Livewire. But in most cases, you're definitely going to want to put the features together with the permissions and attach the permissions and attach the middleware that controls those permissions inside the products table. So for example, I can come in here and say manage or access dashboard. Okay, I'll say access dashboard just the same way I have declared it inside this config area as well. So I come in here, save this, and now I can access the products table. But if I go to the dashboards table and refresh, actually it should be access dashboard. Okay, and over here, inside this route over here for the dashboard, I'm supposed to put in this middleware for the accessing of the dashboard as well. Okay. So I'll put inside this middleware of access dashboard. Yeah, I'll put it like that. So now we have this, because we have this feature inside here, inside our config, and we also have it inside our database for the super admin. If I misspelled this and saved it, we will have a forbidden. All right. So we'll just set it like that, and now we'll reload this, and this works. So it's all lying in the middleware. It's also lying in the features, the way you decide to put the permissions and the features and all those different things. That is what is codependent. So inside of this, I'm going to actually create a more elaborate discussion about how to deal with roles and permissions inside this system and inside any kind of system that you want to create. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys tomorrow when Laravel 12 releases. I am so excited, and I'm so excited for the features that are going to be coming out, and I'm hoping I'll see you guys in the next video, of course. This is my last Laravel 11 broadcast, my last Laravel 11 tutorial, and I'm hoping that up till this point, I have provided a little bit more insight into the role-based access control inside our features. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you guys in the next one. Please do indeed take care. And as always, may God bless.